forever, killer. I drop bombs like Hiroshima.
Somebody said, look at LeakYou video. What the fuck is LeakYou? Is it like a site? What's LeakYou? LeakYou. Is it a YouTube channel? Oh, shit. Oh, all right, bet. Here we go.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
One, two, three, four.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Of course, that depends on where you are as of right now. We reported last night that Sean Diddy Combs was arrested by authorities, federal authorities, including Homeland Security. And everything is starting to come out this morning. And I actually have the indictment. We're going to go through it together. Shout out to my anonymous source. There's a press conference. There's a presser being held right now that we want to tune in for just a minute, but then we are going to proceed to actually read this 14-page count indictment that indicts is the United States of America versus Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, PD, and Love as defendant. But before we start reviewing the indictment, let's just listen in real quick for a moment here on the actual press conference that is taking place right now. We got pictures of guns that apparently they're attributing to Diddy, assault rifles. This is United States versus Sean Combs. It's going down today. Again, I'm going to read this unsealed indictment. I've got it in its entirety, and we will be reviewing this.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start the Sean Combs press conference in about 2 minutes. If you have any questions about presentment, I'll come back out and we'll go over timing and give you a few.
He subjected victims to physical, emotional.
Hold on, guys. Let me get it all here. Let me get it all. All right, here we go.
Morning, everyone. My name is Damian Williams, and I'm the U.S. Attorney here in the Southern District of New York. Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice. Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs and others, including violence against witnesses to his abuse, kidnapping, and arson. The indictment alleges that on more than one occasion, Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with the supplies, including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. When the hotel rooms got damaged, they helped clean it up. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. The indictment also alleges that they helped Combs cover up his crimes. During the March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier, a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and Combs attempted to bribe the staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet. And as the indictment alleges, in late 2023, after public allegations were made about Combs' crimes, he and others pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent, including by making phone calls to witnesses and victims and giving them a false narrative of what they had experienced. And as alleged, Combs used others to help conceal his abuse by monitoring and preventing victims from leaving a location in order to hide their injuries, or by locating and contacting a victim who had attempted to flee. As part of this investigation, in March of this year, special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs' residences in Miami and Los Angeles. They also executed a warrant for Combs' electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether. Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well that we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced. Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there. Now, I want to be clear about 2 things. First, this office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York. Second, we are not done. This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly. Anyone with information can call 1-877-4-HSI-TIP. I want to express my deep appreciation for the victims and witnesses who have used their voices and helped bring this criminal conduct to light. We would not be here without them. I also want to thank the dedicated case agents on the HSI Trafficking in Person Squad in New York. They have been with us since day one and have worked tirelessly on this investigation. They will continue to be invaluable partners to us. I also want to thank the incredible agents and analysts from SDNY who have also provided tremendous assistance on this case. I'm deeply grateful for their continued work. And finally, I want to thank the outstanding career prosecutors from SDNY who are handling this case. Meredith Foster, Emily Johnson, Chrissy Slavic, Madison Smizer, and Mitzi Steiner, and their supervisors, Jamie Backleiter and Jacqueline Kelly. They are members of the Civil Rights Unit in our criminal division. We created the Civil Rights Unit when I became U.S. Attorney. I'm deeply proud of their work on this and so many other cases. I'll now take some questions.
Eric Katursky, ABC.
Thanks, Damian, thanks. The indictment describes aggressive, open, violent, hedonistic abuse that you say was recurrent and widely known. Why did it take law enforcement so long to intervene? How many women were victimized by Sean Combs, and how many others were involved?
Look, our investigation is ongoing. We are committed to bringing justice to everyone who's been victimized by the defendant. I can't tell you why it took so long. I think the better focus is on the fact that we are here today. And we are committed to making sure that justice is done. Next question.
Thank you. Julia Ainsley, NBC.
Thank you for doing this. You said we are not done and that Combs did not do this alone. Do you foresee that there could be other charges related to this case?
I'm not taking anything off the table.
Janet Fisher, Newsday.
What's the difference between the sex trafficking and promoting travel for the purpose of prostitution?
Well, there are different crimes with different elements. I don't think we should get into the nitty-gritty of the legal discussion right now, but the sex trafficking, we believe, they're all serious offenses, but the sex trafficking conduct carries some significant penalties, and we are gratified that we were able to bring that charge.
Is one more coercive than the other?
I'm not going to be able to get into that, but you can look it up, and yes, sex trafficking, especially when it involves coercion or force, is a very serious crime, and it carries significant penalties.
Good afternoon, Darla Miles, ABC7 New York. Thank you for this press conference and for the details. 2 questions. In context of this indictment and the information that was presented to the grand jury, are you able to clarify the number of victims? It's mentioned plural in the indictment, but can you specify the number of victims just for this particular indictment? And secondly, can you provide details about the alleged arson?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide either. The number of victims, you are correct. We are intentional in saying multiple. The details of the arson incident are limited to what we have in the indictment and also the detention letter that we filed, which contains more details than the indictment does at various points, but we don't have anything more beyond that. Next question.
Lynn Tran, CNN.
Are any of his accomplices or associates under investigation? And additionally, could he face any more charges?
So the investigation is ongoing. That means both as to him and to anyone else who we believe committed the crime with him. Next question.
Juliet Papa.
Hi, good morning from 1010 Wins. Any indication that some of the women or victims here were imprisoned in his residences, and did he have locations where he kept them, and were not allowed to leave? And also, he's indicted here, although there were searches and raids in LA, Miami. Why in New York?
Well, I'm biased. I'm the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. I think that we have an outstanding track record of bringing some of the most impactful, sprawling, complex, difficult sex trafficking, human trafficking, labor trafficking, you name it. The Southern District of New York can do it, and so we're very proud of that. And so the scope and complexity of this investigation isn't something that we ran from. It's something that we embrace, and we will continue to do that. As to your question about whether he imprisoned anyone, all I can say is that, I mentioned this March 2016 incident where something was caught on video where a victim was attempting to flee, and there was violence that was associated with it.
Was that at the residence or a hotel?
That was at a hotel.
Matthew Lee, Inner City Press.
Thanks a lot. Does your office intend to seek remand, or are you reaching a bail package? And if you're willing, how would you contrast this with the R. Kelly case in EDNY in terms of the elements? Thanks.
So we will be seeking detention. We have filed a letter laying out our reasoning for seeking pretrial detention. I'm not going to be able to expand beyond what's in the letter, but it contains all of the reasoning, and it contains the law as well. There is a presumption of detention in a case like this, and we think that's warranted.
John Anise, New York Daily News.
Thank you. I was hoping to get some more detail about the searches of his residence, the guns, the cases of lubricant, and the videos. Where were they found amongst his residence? Were they all scattered around the houses in one place? I kind of wanted to just get a better picture of how that stuff was found.
Well, look, I think that some of the details that you're seeking are in the detention letter. So, for instance, some of the AR-15s, 2 of the 3 defaced AR-15s were found in his bedroom closet in Miami, broken down into parts along with magazines with ammunition loaded in them. So some of that detail is in the detention letter. Beyond that, I'm not going to be able to get into where other items were stored.
Ben Kochman, Post.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Your office was the office that had been prosecuting Jeffrey Epstein before he died in custody. I have not read your detention memo yet. It's the first thing I'm going to do after this ends. But does the memo address, or is your office concerned with Combs' safety in custody, given what happened with Epstein?
So we are concerned with anyone's safety whenever they are detained prior to trial. It's part of our obligations to keep people safe as well. It's part of the criminal justice system. So But I do not draw any sort of connection between Jeffrey Epstein's suicide and what may or may not happen to any other defendant while they are detained pretrial. And of course, the decision whether to detain the defendant will be up to a judge. Our position is that pretrial detention is warranted under the law and based on the facts of this case, and I'll leave it at that.
Are some of the prosecutors on this case some of the same prosecutors that had been handling that or that worked on the Maxwell case?
So I'm not going to get into the staffing. I will say that this team, this group of AUSAs, this incredible group has been working on this case around the clock, and they've had their hands full. Next question.
Gus Rosendale, NBC News.
Good morning, sir. Combs' attorney said that his client has been cooperative with investigators. He said that this morning. I was wondering if you would have a reaction to that.
Let me just say this. I think that generally and with increasing frequency, the word cooperative or cooperating has taken on tremendous elasticity and no longer really bears any relation to what the word means when we use it in a very specific context. So responding to lawful process and the like does not qualify as cooperation when we use that term here.
Mike Sisak, AP.
Thanks. To that end, was there any discussion of Mr. Combs surrendering? I understand he was taken into custody at a hotel in Manhattan last night, and maybe that wasn't the plan. Can you elaborate on how that came about and why that was?
I'm not going to be able to get into any sort of operational details as to how he was taken into custody and when. He is in custody right now. He will be appearing in court later today.
Was there any discussion of him surrendering, given they claim he's cooperating?
I'm not going to be able to get into law enforcement tactics or operations. Well, I can't get into the charging decision. It is very meaningful to us that weapons were possessed, as we allege in the indictment. Part of the reason why this conduct was so pervasive and harmful was because victims and others didn't necessarily feel comfortable denying him his wishes, as we allege, because of the presence of firearms. I should leave it there.
Thanks. Last question, Jacob Shamison.
Jacob Shamsian, Business Insider. Thank you. Given that he's the sole defendant in this case and that you allege he's part of a conspiracy that involves members of his companies, do you anticipate a superseding indictment that bring allegations against other members of his companies or other co-conspirators as well?
I can't take anything off the table. Anything is possible. Our investigation is very active and ongoing. And I think a lot of you who cover this office know that when we say such things, that developments are certainly foreseeable, but I cannot predict them sitting here today. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. What part of his business empire is exposed for Richard?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Well, you all heard it there. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to everybody who's in the chat right now. 1 second, you all. All right, my apologies, you all. So let's bring up the actual indictment, but you all heard it. Excuse me. It does not sound like to me that the federal authorities want to even give Sean Combs bail. They are asking that he be detained. You heard it, over 1,000 bottles of lubricant was found during these searches. It's unbelievable. But let's take a look at this indictment, you all. Again, this is the United States District Court, Southern District of New York. Again, this indictment was sealed but has been unsealed, and it is the United States of America versus Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, PD, and Love. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy, the grand jury charges. The overview that for decades, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees, resources, and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Two, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love. The defendant operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global, collectively the Combs Business. Corporate entities in the Combs business included, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse towards women and other individuals. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performance of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. At times, Combs and others acting at his direction made arrangements for women and commercial sex workers to fly to Combs's location. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. 4, physical abuse by Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love. The defendant was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing for years. Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. These assaults were at times witnessed by others and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016, which was captured on video and later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. When a member of the hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. And I believe that is referring to Cassie. Combs's violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. 5. Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. These employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, and other close associates acted as Combs' intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. Now, the Combs enterprise, from at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and others known and unknown were members and associates of a criminal organization, the Combs Enterprise, or the Enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The Combs Enterprise, including its leadership, its members, and its associates, constituted an enterprise as defined by Title 18, United States Code, Section 1961. That is a group of individuals associated, in fact, although not a legal entity. The Combs Enterprise consisted of Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, entities within the Combs business, including but not limited to Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global, and 3 individuals employed by and associated with the Combs business, and 4 others known and unknown. The Combs Enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in, and its activities affected, interstate and foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, was the leader of the Combs Enterprise. Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and others known and unknown, participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs Enterprises affairs. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, as well as other close associates of Combs. Purposes of the Combs Enterprise. 11. The purpose of the Combs Enterprise included the following: operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry, while also enriching members and associates of the enterprise, including its leader, Combs, and in particular, those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of the Combs enterprise, including the power of its leader, Combs, through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. Enabling Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics distribution, and other crimes, and concealing the commission of such acts. G. Securing absolute loyalty from members of the Combs enterprise, including through acts of violence and threats. And H. Protecting the Combs enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection and prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. Means and methods of the enterprise. 12. Among the means and methods by which Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise, including the following. Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, freak-offs. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. He was worldwide with it. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. What? What? After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. Wow. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens and lighting, cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate room damage, arranging for travel for victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs, resupplying Combs with requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial sex workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. You all, 1,000 bottles. Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in freak-offs. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries and took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. Victims believed they could not refuse Combs' demands without risking their financial or job security, or without repercussions in the form of physical and emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims of and witnesses to his abuse. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise enabled Combs' control over victims by following his directions regarding financial payments to victims, advancing or suppressing the victim's career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substances Combs used to keep the victims compliant. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence towards the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. Instead, members and associates of the Combs enterprise helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels or Combs's residences. These occasions included instances in which a victim was required to remain in hiding, sometimes for several days at a time, to recover from injuries Combs inflicted without being publicly observed. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his abuse. When employees witnessed to his abuse or others threatened Combs' authority or reputation, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engaged in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputational harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence included kidnapping and arson. How many of you all are really thinking about Cassie right about now, Miss Ventura? We just let me take a moment here. A lot of what we're reading here, we kind of got knowledge of during Cassie's lawsuit against Sean Combs that he settled within 24 hours because she knows where all the bodies are buried. It's not even just Cassie, though. Little Rod has hundreds of hours of video and audio footage that incriminates Diddy. And this is based on a civil lawsuit that he filed that is still ongoing at this time. I'm telling you, my next video in the title, it's going to say 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant and IV fluids. You all, these freak-offs lasted for so long and they were so intense. Sean Combs, Diddy, had to receive IV fluids, and so did his victims. He procured these IV fluids. In addition, on multiple occasions, Combs threw both objects and people, as well as hit, dragged, choked, and shoved others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity or legal or law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023, following public allegation of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. On phone calls, Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with a false narrative of events in an effort to conceal Combs's crimes. Combs caused these calls to be recorded on at least 2 occasions. The racketeering conspiracy. From at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and others known and unknown, being persons employed by and associated with the Combs enterprise, described in paragraphs 6 through 12 of this indictment, an enterprise engaged in and the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States, to wit, Title 18, United States Code Section 1962, that is, to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, as that term is defined in Title 18, United States Code, sections 1961 and 19615, consisting of multiple acts involving kidnapping, chargeable under the following provisions of state law: California Penal Code 207, kidnapping; California Penal Code 21664, attempt; California Penal Code 31, aiding and abetting; and California Penal Code 182, conspiracy. How many of you are getting the idea and the thought here? As I said last night, and I've even said it, when I reported on the raid that happened in Diddy's, on his residences, the feds already had what they needed on Diddy. The raids that happened, the coordinated raids that occurred at all of his homes, that was just icing on the cake. By enacting those search warrants, they found guns, they found narcotics, and over 1,000 bottles of lubricant and baby oil, again, that was used during these freak-offs. So they got, again, icing on the cake. But I guarantee you, when the federal authorities hit both of his homes, they already had charges. They already knew they were going to charge him with something. But federal authorities are known to do this. They're known to really, they're not going to come knocking unless they've got something major. And the way that they enacted the raid on Diddy, it was obvious that Diddy was in a lot of trouble even then. Multiple acts involving bribery, chargeable under the following provisions of state law: California Penal Code 137, bribery of a witness; California Penal Code 21664, attempt; California Penal Code 31, aiding and abetting; and California Penal Code 182, conspiracy. Notice, again, in this indictment, it's referring to California state law. Now, you heard in the beginning, in the presser, the district attorney talked about how this case is not over. It is very possible that we may see others arrested and brought in under this racketeering conspiracy. And by reading this indictment, you can tell that there are potential state charges that could be applied here. But federal charges trump state charges. Federal charges, that ensures a day for day in the federal prison system. And also federal authorities will step in when something has happened that crosses state lines. Which, again, in the beginning of this indictment, he's accused of doing this internationally. He had these freak-offs and procured sex workers, and he was international with it. These people weren't even just crossing state lines, they were crossing country lines. D, multiple acts indictable under Title 18 United States Code Section 1512 relating to tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant. Multiple acts indictable under Title 18 United States Code Sections 1589 and 2 relating to forced labor. Multiple acts indictable under Title 18 United States Code Sections 1591 and 2 relating to sex trafficking. Multiple acts indictable under Title 18 United States Code Sections 2421, 2422, and 2 relating to transportation and inducement to travel for purposes of prostitution and other illegal sexual activities, and multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics and controlled substances, including cocaine, oxycodone, alprazolam, which is Xanax, 3, 4, methylene dioxide methamphetamine. Wow. dimethylxpenthalamine, or however you say that, right? Gamma hydroxybutyric acid and ketamine. So cocaine, oxys, Xanax, meth, ketamine, and some other substances that we're going to have to look up in this 4-bromo 2 and 5. I mean, I'm sure one of them is this ecstasy, also hydroxybutyric acid, all the drugs you could ever want. Don't forget that Diddy's drug mule was arrested in Miami. And when that man was arrested and charged with drugs that were found on that plane, Diddy's phone was taken. Diddy had a phone that was taken during that warrant and search and that subsequent arrest of his drug mule. Again, ketamine in violation of Title 21, United States Code Sections 84.1, A1, B1C, B1E, B2, and 846, distribution and possession with intent to distribute, and conspiracy to do the same. And Title 18, United States Code Section 2, aiding, abetting, and willfully causing. It was a part of the conspiracy that Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, agreed that a conspirator would commit at least 2 acts of racketeering activity in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise. Notice of special sentencing factor. And before I continue, I just want to say this. There's no question in my mind that Sean Diddy Combs, aka Puff Daddy, is facing life in prison, not even just on one of these charges alone. One of these charges alone could put him in prison for the rest of his life. That's the game that is about to be played here. And the district attorney is not interested in any kind of bail for Diddy. And let me tell you why the guns were on display during the press conference. Because they want to make Diddy look like a violent type of offender. And that video of him beating Cassie is only going to help the district attorney. And most likely what we're going to see here is Diddy will be remanded until trial. In other words, he's not going to get a bail. He's not going to be able to get out of jail on bond whatsoever. The district attorney is very clear that this is a special circumstance and they want Sean Combs to be remanded. Now, notice of special sentencing factor. From at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, as part of his agreement to conduct and participate in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, agreed to, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, advertise, maintain, patronize, and solicit by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion as described in Title 18, United States Code Section 1591, and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act in violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 1591, A1 and B1. Title 18, United States Code Section 1962D. Count 2. Now, everything I just read you was related to the first charge, count 1. Now this is count 2. Sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, victim 1. The grand jury further charges that from at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion as described in Title 18 United States Code, Section 1591, and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim 1, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim 1 to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim 1 was engaging in commercial sex acts as a result of force, fraud, and coercion. Count 3. Transportation to engage in prostitution. The grand jury further charges from at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2024 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, knowingly transported an individual in interstate and foreign commerce with intent that the individual engage in prostitution, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. Up to and including in or about 2024, which means that even after the lawsuit that Cassie filed and the settlement, that was 2023. This year, Diddy has been under such scrutiny. And it appears that he was still engaging in some of these actions, even though he was under a tremendous amount of scrutiny and watchful eyes. I wouldn't be surprised if during the trial it comes out that police may have inserted a informant into his camp. But again, shout out to Little Rod. He's, very much so continuing his civil case against Diddy. Again, he claims to have hundreds of hours of Diddy and him incriminating himself in every which way you could possibly think of. Why? Because Diddy wanted him to record everything. He wanted him to record everything. Like so many narcissists, would. Now, forfeiture allegations. That's telling us, right, that the federal authorities aren't even just looking to criminally charge him. They want to forfeit something. They want to take. So as a result of committing the offense alleged in count 1 of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States pursuant to Title 18 United States Code, Section 1963, any and all interests, the defendant acquired or maintained in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1962. Any and all interests in, securities of, claims against, and property or contractual rights of any kind, affording a source of influence over the enterprise named and described herein, which the defendant established, operated, controlled, conducted, and participated in the conduct of, in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1962, and any and all property constituting and derived from proceeds obtained directly and indirectly, said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 2 of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States, pursuant to Title 18, United States Code, Section 1594, any and all property, real and personal, involved in, used, or intended to be used to commit or to facilitate the commission of said offense, and any and all property traceable to such property. Any and all property, real and personal, constituting or derived from proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of property involved in said offense, and proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. Basically, what they're saying here is, if they get him, they convict him, they want to take his money, his houses, all his cars, everything with any value. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 3 of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States, pursuant to Title 18, United States Code, Section 2428, any and all property, real and personal, constituting or derived from proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of said offense, and any and all property, real or personal, that was used or intended to be used to commit or facilitate the commission of said offense. And Title 18, United States Code, Section 981, and Title 28, United States Code, Section 2461, any and all property, real and personal, that constitutes or is derived from proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. Substitute assets provision. If any of the above described for forfeitable property as a result of any act or omission of the defendant, A, cannot be located upon the exercise of due diligence, B, has been transferred or sold to or deposited with a third person, C, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, D, has been substantially diminished in value, or E, has been commingled with other property which cannot be subdivided without difficulty, it is the intent of the United States, pursuant to Title 18 United States Code, Section 1963, Title 21 United States Code, Section 853, and Title 28 United States Code, Section 2461, to seek forfeiture of any other property of the defendant up to the value of the above forfeitable property. And there is the signature of Damian Williams, the man who held the press conference. Now, allow me to look here in the chat, you all, because I haven't had an opportunity to even read it, but I do want to give a shout out to each and every one of you that came through. Sorry, I wasn't able to call out each and every one of you. Let me take a look here at Dalai Lama T's comments here. Yes, he had to sell his shares of Revolt when all of this just blew up. He had to absolutely share, or he got rid of it, sold his shares immediately. Like, it happened quick, fast, and in a hurry. And it was all because of what went down. Remember when that video dropped, when that video of him beating Cassie dropped, that changed everything. And it also turned people against Diddy, right? There were so many people that had something to say to Cassie. So many people that even criticized Cassie. You know, people accusing her of just wanting money, and trying to go after, you know, a rich guy because they, you know, he didn't want her no more. That's not at all what happened here. To the point where I've seen celebrities have to come back and make apologies for their comments. People backtracking, walking back their comments that they had about Cassie after that video dropped of him beating her in that hotel. I'm going to tell you a theory here. My theory is that victim one in this indictment is Cassie, Cassandra Ventura. I believe she is victim one. I believe that Cassie is fully invested in this case against Diddy, meaning she's working with authorities. She has said so. She has said that she would work with authorities and would continue. When Diddy dropped that apology video that everyone just shook their head to, thought it was trash, insincere, she did make a comment on social media and basically, you know, she didn't call him out directly, but she did pretty much call him out and basically called his apology a bunch of crap. And that she would continue to work with authorities. Now, thank you, Dolly, regarding this information. So let's start with the first one here. For Bromo 2, and these are the drugs that was mentioned in the indictment, is an illicit drug and hallucinogen. Gamma hydrobutyric acid is GHB, the infamous GHB. Hey, Global Empire, good to see you. 3,4 methylene dioxymethamphetamine, MDMA, is a ring-substituted amphetamine derivative structurally related to the hallucinogen mescaline and entactogenic, neurotoxic, and motor stimulatory activities. Yeah, Dolly, Mary J. Blige has been really quiet, hasn't she? She hasn't said a word. Neither has Usher. But many of us wonder about Usher. We talked even last night about the video with Justin Bieber and Odell Beckham. That was suspect AF. These are the types of things Diddy would do to have something dirty on someone and use it as collateral. And this indictment is pretty much saying exactly that. Yes, Dolly, that's exactly what this sounds like. And what Dolly is saying in the chat is, so the way it sounds is in the indictment, they will go after Revolt, even though there is a new secret owner. Also, Ciroc might be in that same boat. It's no question. There's no question from this indictment that not only is the federal authorities criminally charging Sean Combs. They want to forfeit. They want him to forfeit money and properties. Anything in the Combs enterprise that would have benefited from this. That is the very definition of a RICO, the Racketeering Act. The RICO statute has been applied to mob bosses, and the federal authorities have a RICO statute, but there are some states that also have a RICO statute. Georgia's one, for example, where you can be convicted on a state charge of, and it'd be a RICO. RICO, it essentially means that he worked in a group, right? And his business is shared in all of this fuckery. But I can't get over the over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and sexual lubricant, and the fact that these freak-offs would last for so long, days, that Diddy would have to receive IV fluids. IV fluids. And so did some of his victims. They had to receive IV fluids because they did these freak-offs that lasted for days. People have always said that Diddy was a weird dude. People have always said it. Now we're really, really seeing how weird it gets. Now listen, I want to keep this particular video short, to the point, because I want people to be able to come in, see the press conference, and see the unsealed indictment that my anonymous source was able to send to me. Thank you so much. But I will be back in just a minute, actually. I hope you have your notifications turned on, because I want to talk some more about these civil lawsuits that pretty much whipped and kind of started this ball rolling downhill. And I want to go into some more detail with you guys. And it's just so much, I don't want to try to pack it just in this video. I especially want to talk about Little Rod's allegations. Cuba Gooding Jr., Aaron Hall are other names that are being thrown up in all of this, that Diddy tried to groom Rod to pass him off as a sex thing for Cuba Gooding Jr., who also on a yacht touched him in inappropriate ways, he says. Aaron Hall, singer Aaron Hall, is also listed in a lawsuit, details from a different victim, a woman who said she was raped by Diddy and Aaron Hall. You know the guy that sang "I Miss You"? You know the song? That guy. Nobody is safe. These celebrities, they are not safe. You heard the district attorney. He wants him remanded, and he said that it's very possible additional people could be charged. It's possible that Diddy could receive additional charges. And again, the reason why the guns were on display during this press conference, because they want to put across the message that Diddy is dangerous and he should not get bail. Shout out to the LeakYou community. Please join us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
Like we always do, at times, I'm going to be opening up the Discord for a 24-hour period. You are welcomed to come into the Discord at discord.com or discord.gg/LeakYou, where I will place this indictment paperwork. I will create a thread and upload it so that you all can review it and read it at your own, at your own time. Again, you all, I will be back live here in about 2 minutes. I'm going to end this live stream because I, again, want to keep it timely and to the point of just the indictment itself. I will be back and we're going to further discuss these civil lawsuits, which I believe led to the stunning criminal charges that has been levied against Sean Combs, aka Diddy, who's now been charged with sex trafficking, kidnapping, right? And they're talking about with the sex trafficking, like things of like arson, kidnapping, all sorts of things. But listen, I also want to talk about a potential murder that happened inside of a recording studio. But racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. This is what all has been revealed from this sealed indictment that has now been unsealed and released as of this morning. Again, Sean Diddy Combs has been the subject of a sex trafficking investigation for quite some time. And I don't know if you all heard, there was a man that won a $100 million lawsuit against Diddy recently. He's in prison, and he claims 30 years ago, Diddy violated him. And he actually won his lawsuit by default, a $100 million lawsuit, which actually has some legal standing. Diddy knew this was coming down. But something happened that caused authorities to arrest him on Monday night. He was supposed to be arrested on Tuesday, today. But something happened that forced authorities to act sooner. Now, Diddy was seen yesterday walking around New York, talking with folks, chopping it up with people. And I'm pretty sure there was a trail on his every move. They actually arrested him at a hotel, hotel, not a motel, a 5-star hotel, right? This man and his sexual desires is what is behind all of this craziness that is now happening. Someone that would go to those lengths for their sexual desires. Freak-offs that would last days. Freak-offs that would be so intense. Victims would need IV fluids to recover. Diddy would receive IV fluids to recover. What doctor would even prescribe IV fluids in this sort of a manner? But again, people with that type of money can get whatever they want. But for his sexual desires, and it's so obvious, it's not just women. He violates men too. Rod, the man whose civil lawsuit we're going to be talking about here, he found himself waking up one morning naked, confused, and in the bed with Diddy and 2 other commercial sex workers. And he absolutely felt he had been drugged. There's also no way that you've got someone having freak-offs for days and there not be a member of the staff, the household staff, a maid, or somebody that does not see or hear these things. When are we going to see a maid or 2 come out and tell a story and sell it to the National Enquirer? All right, everyone. I appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. Again, I will be live here again momentarily to talk some more about the civil lawsuit, and we will go from there, guys. Until next time.
The judgment sentence that you are an asshole. The trial is over. Thank you, everybody.
Let's play a game. You have 10 seconds to take all your stuff and get out of my life. 10, 9, 8.
God bless you, motherfucker.
You're really smart. Like really, really, really smart like I am.